All right, today we got Coach Ruff. He is a defensive analyst and defensive line at Liberty University. Coach, thanks for being here. I think this has been 2 years in the making or something, trying to make this work.
Yeah, I mean, I think we've been playing phone tag for the last at least year.
Yeah, at least a year. Yeah, I take full blame because we were talking. I coach 3 sports, and then I have all that. So it's like, let me ask you this: when I was texting you, telling you my exact times, isn't that weird? I know exactly what time because I have to look at my schedule, and I'm like, I know exactly what time.
4 p.m. Central. This is when I'm free, and I'm like, okay, so Central to Eastern. How does this work? I keep forgetting.
Oh yeah, especially if I get somebody from the California time zone. Oh, good Lord. I'm like, oh, wait, that's 2 hours. Wait a minute. Because some people are like, oh, can you do 3 or something? I'm like, wait a minute, that's 5 my time or whatever. I'm getting done with practice. Hold on a second. Yeah. I live 40 minutes from the school. So by the time I get home people give me crap for it all the time. I have a calendar on my computer that's like podcast sports related of like, okay, I'm done with practice at 5:45. I'm going to get home probably around 7. I'm good at 7:15. Then the next day, well, I got a game and this and that.
Yeah, you've got more stuff going on. I'm like, I don't know how you balance all that.
Well, like I said, that's all I know. Like when you're a kid playing sports and you get to high school, and
that's all you know.
I don't know how it was when you were growing up. We played 3 sports. Like it was like the norm to play 3 sports. So it was like, that's all I knew was like football to basketball to baseball or track. Then the summer hit, you have to go to basketball, you have to go to football. That's all I knew. So like my parents were like, oh, you're playing sports. We're not doing vacations because you've committed to this. You're like, that's all I know. So I don't take vacations. I coach. There's just, and I kind of like going from like I love football. It's my number one. But there's something about when you're done, you get about a week or 2 off, and then you get to do another sport, coaching or playing. Like you get to kind of decompress from football, and then you do the next one. Then when that's done, do the next one, which I think is healthy for kids to do that, not just do one. Like, because a lot of our kids, like there's kids specializing, and I'm like, that cannot be mentally good. Like just constantly doing that one when you're that young.
No, well, that's what like a lot of the guys that we recruit, you'll love to see guys do multiple sports, right? Like, especially for like defense. Like I wrestled growing up. And so wrestling makes you a better football player and football makes you a better wrestler, but if you just specialize just in football, now you're not seeing, you learn so many different things doing different sports, baseball, hand-eye coordination, and then wrestling, how your body moves, you start to learn how to use your hands, your body position. A tackle in football is just a blast double leg in wrestling,
Right.
So there's a lot of different things where when guys start to specialize in just one sport, it usually pretty much apprehends them unless you're in the top 1%,
Well, that's what I was going to say. Like how many times, well, we'll get to your college career because like I said, this is Joe Rogan, so we're kind of bouncing, but I'm always curious because I try to tell kids, even Division III level, Division II level, whatever it is, I know kids personally that have gotten recruited for some sport from being watched doing another.
Yeah.
I know guys that got recruited for football, but they got offered after the coaches watched them in wrestling or basketball.
Mm-hmm.
Or I've known kids that got offered in baseball because of that baseball coach watching them do some other type of sport. Like, hey, we know what you can do in the sport we want you to do, but like, how can you handle a different competitiveness? So like, is there a lot of kids that you guys in your time have offered like from watching them do something else?
Yeah. I mean, it's so different now. Like it used to be like that. I know when I was in high school, we had this one guy who his name was Eric Hilton, and he was a freak, and he was a wrestler, but was like, he was a heavyweight.
Mm-hmm.
He was probably 6'3", like 280, came out and played D-line. And then first year really playing football, and he was strong as an ox.
Yeah.
And he got recruited and got offered a scholarship playing football, and he played 1 year of football and was just a great wrestler. And I'm like, you have no idea how like gifted and not, I wouldn't say lucky, but you have no idea how blessed you are that you get to play 1 year of football when guys play their entire lives and don't even get to sniff a chance of playing, in college.
Right. Because because I remember I coached against a school that's a suburb. They had like God, he had to have been 6'7" or so, and he was just a big boy, like a big offensive lineman. And I never coached against him in football, but the school I was at coached against him in basketball. And I'm sitting there and I see these guys walk up in polos with a W and it's purple. And I was like, oh, Western Illinois is here. And I was like, oh, wait, I know one of those guys. He's a football coach. They were watching that kid play basketball, and like shortly halfway through the basketball season said, okay, that's the kid we want to play football, offered him. Because their football team was not very good. They went like 0-9, 0-9, 0-9, and he still got recruited because he still stood out. And they watched him play basketball. And so I get curious. I'm like, well, why were you watching that? They're like, we want to see how his footwork is. We want to see how his body moves differently than just blocking somebody. We want to see what kind of teammate he is. We want to see how he acts to this competition and stuff like that. And that was when I was younger. So then it was, oh, so you guys are actually recruiting this kid for football or baseball or basketball, and you're watching them do another sport, and that's kind of what elevates it. So I try to tell our kids, because baseball takes over, like specialized in baseball has like taken over.
That and soccer.
And soccer. It's so bad. The only time you see like specializing in football is when they do like the flag and 7-on-7, but we try to tell those like we try to tell them like no college coach cares about your 7-on-7 film all the time. It might be like fun to do, but at the end of the day, like they really don't care. But the baseball thing has taken over, and it's so frustrating. I always tell this story. Like a couple years ago, we had a 6'3", 200-pound quarterback. Going into his senior year, he got up to like 215. He put like 15 pounds of muscle on, and we were excited. Baseball kid. So he came up to us, and he was like, hey, the first part of June, I'm going to these showcases. And we're like, that's fine. We're going to work around your schedule. Come back in July. We're good. Halfway into June, hey, I'm not doing football. I don't want to get hurt. I'm focusing on baseball. So we were like, oh, shit. Our senior quarterback is not going to do. So we had to start a sophomore quarterback, which he's fine. Like he got our conference offensive player of the year this year as a junior. So like we figured it out, but then no offense to this kid, I'm so glad he got to go to Quincy, which is Division II. And we're like, that's awesome. Glad you got to do baseball. But then we try to tell him like, you could have gotten that scholarship still playing football or doing something else and not just specializing.
Yeah, there's no doubt. Yeah, if you take away all the other opportunities whenever you just specialize, especially if you're a great athlete, like when you're younger and you've got all this athletic ability and you start just specializing in baseball or just football, you may be better at something else and you won't know that. And so whenever it's like, oh, I didn't get the scholarship in football or baseball, then that's the end all be all. Where if you played other sports, then you have something to rely on. You have other opportunities. And when you just do one thing, then you just end up screwing yourself.
Right. Unless you, like you said, unless you're that special player.
Yeah.
When you're like a sophomore in high school and you've committed somewhere, then it's like, okay.
You're Travis Hunter.
Right. Or like, God, coach, I know we're going to get to your story soon. My story's crazy. Like there was a point where I was coaching at 3 different high schools. I was working at one doing football, but they had no stipends for any other sports. So then the town that I lived in, I was coaching basketball at a high school there. And then the spring came. There was a high school I drove by every day, and they were like, hey, we need a baseball coach. So I did baseball at one school, basketball at one, football at another. And the one I did baseball at, there was this really good pitcher, and he was a sophomore, already committed to Wake Forest. And so he only focused on baseball. And I said, that right there makes sense to me. You've committed to Wake Forest. You're doing baseball. If you just want to do baseball, cool. You've already kind of decided your future. At the time, he was projected 3rd round in major league draft as a sophomore. So it's like, okay, that's your path. But when you don't know and you're a sophomore or junior and you're like, well, I have Division IIIs, which nothing wrong with Division III, nothing wrong with it at all. But it's like when that's who's talking to you, you're like, don't specialize, man. Just do something else. And you never know. You may shine in the other sport, and all of a sudden bigger baseball schools might come along and be like, oh, my God, we saw what you did in soccer. We saw what you did on or whatever. Mm-hmm. And it comes and helps you in that sport. So it's always interesting to hear college coaches on that perspective. And then it's nice for you guys to hear what we're dealing with when you got kids wanting to specialize.
Yeah.
So how did you end up at Liberty? Like, how was that path? How did you know you want to coach? How did you know you wanted to get into the crazy college football world?
So I'm from Charleston, South Carolina.
Yep.
And so my dad played football at the Citadel, and he was the first All-American there. Jersey's retired, played in the NFL for a while. And so football was really, what I was going to do.
Right.
But my older brother, he was a wrestler. So growing up, I played football, I wrestled, and then I swam. When I was 12, my brother committed suicide. And that's actually 17 years today.
I'm so sorry.
So, but it's cool. I actually get to tell a story today, And so he ended up committing suicide, and I had a wrestling match that day. Basically, the next day, it was a tournament in Somerville, and I went and I just took all my anger out just wrestling. And so I did that growing up, and then played football in high school, wrestled in high school, played golf, and then got a chance I got offered a scholarship. It's actually a funny story. So I went in the summer. One of my best friends and one of my teammates, Lee Russell, he was going to Charleston Southern's football camp. And I was like, all right, I'll go. And I didn't have $20. So my mom she is a professor at College of Charleston.
Yeah.
She had to leave work, drive to North Charleston, which is like 20 minutes away. Give me $20 so I can go to this camp. Well, go to the camp. I ran a 4.4, like 3 or 4.45, something like that. And Chad Staggs was the defense coordinator. And he looked at me, he was like, "Who are you?" And I was like, "I'm Bobby Ruff. I'm from West Ashley. Like I didn't pre-register. I literally just showed up to this camp." Well, I ended up getting offered a scholarship. Coach Chadwell was the head coach. So Coach Chadwell recruited me. And just, I saw something in him. I wanted to be around him. I thought that he was, very genuine, and you could tell that he cared about you. So played there. I was a captain. My senior year, we won 2 conference championships. Had a good career. I was a really good athlete, but I was not a very good football player. I just played hard. And I gave good effort. I knew nothing about football. Absolutely nothing. And so I go to the Citadel, and I'm a strength and conditioning intern. So I did that for like 2 weeks. And then the head coach was like, "Hey, do you want to be a football coach?" And I was like, yeah, kind of. Like, I wanted to either do football or strength and conditioning because, like I said, when you lose your brother, you wish that he would have had somebody in his corner that could have helped him and not feel alone. And so as a coach, that's what I get to do. I get to be there for people when they're struggling, when they're going through hard times, and you get to be that person that whenever they're struggling, you can keep on pushing them along,
Right.
And so I was like, yeah, I'll coach football. So I did that for, so I was a GA working with the safeties, did that for a year. And then the 2019 season, I got moved to offensive line. So I coached offensive tackles and tight ends.
Wow.
I was like 23 years old, and I was my first full-time job at a Division I school. And I knew nothing about coaching offensive line and triple option offense. Like I thought I didn't know anything, but then I really found out I didn't know anything. And then I did that for a year, and then I got moved to inside linebackers, and I did that for 2 seasons. And then I got burnt out. I kind of let the I don't want to say the lifestyle, but just the constant like ego that you want to just keep climbing.
Yeah.
And I was like, I just got tired. And so I went and coached high school football in South Carolina at Easley High School. So I did that for 2 years. I was the defense coordinator there and taught English, and did that for 2 years. And then Chadwell called me and was like, "Hey, do you want to come up to Liberty?" He just gotten the job. And I was like, absolutely. Because that was my intermediate to long-term goal was to go work for Chadwell.
Right.
So I did that, and it was such a good perspective going from college to high school, back to college, just seeing like you think things are bad sometimes, or that they're not as good here as there might be somewhere else. And when we got here, it was like I went from teaching English to and coaching football at a 4A school. It was a big school, to getting to coach football at Liberty with the D-line coach who was my position coach, the head coach who recruited me and is like a father figure to me. Our chief of staff was my roommate in college. Both offensive coordinators, like everybody came from Charleston Southern. It's like I get to go work with family.
Right.
And just the way that the program's run and the way Chapel is, like it's awesome to kind of see it all come to fruition and kind of see, 11, 12 years ago where we were at Charleston Southern. Now we're at Liberty all together. It's awesome. It's a good feeling. And so, yeah, that's basically my story in a nutshell.
Yeah, that's crazy because, I mean, a lot of people, when they move, like when they go to high school, they stay there, right? Like they barely go back.
Yeah.
That's kind of crazy. And I like Chadwell. Like, obviously, people figured him out at Coastal, right? Like when they popped off and they became Division I. But like hearing him speak, hearing him talk, I'm like, oh, this seems like a good dude, and like he's really who he says. And then I've had Coach Lynham on here, and he said the same thing. Like he's awesome too, and then like just to come to Liberty and stuff like that, and it's a great football program, right? Like it has a deep history, and then we know what happened the year before you guys got there, and you continued it this year. Like, didn't you guys go 12-0 this year or last year? I can't even remember.
We went 13-0. We went 13-0. Went to the Fiesta Bowl and ended up getting click-clacked by the Oregon Ducks. And so we had to go play them. That was awesome. But obviously the outcome wasn't great. But we went 13-0 or 13-1 last year. And then this year we were 8-4. And you go 8-4 and usually you're like, oh, it's pretty good. But the potential at this place and the type of kids that you can get in, it's honestly it's a letdown because you lose. We lost to Kennesaw State, and everybody played us like it was the last game they were ever going to play.
Right.
I mean, everybody just emptied the clip, everything that they had. Kennesaw State hadn't won a game, and we go in there and we were a little complacent, and they beat the crap out of us.
Right.
And then we lost to Jacksonville State, and then lost to Buffalo in the Bahamas Bowl, and then lost to Sam Houston State the last game of the season. And so it's just when you start to get complacent, you start to think that you've arrived and you're good. Someone else is working harder, and we found that out 4 times this year.
Right. It sucks that the college football playoff was last year. You would have made it, I think.
Yeah. Yeah, we would have been probably within the, around the Boise State. Well, actually, no, we wouldn't have gotten the first round bye. We'd probably been the 12th seed. Right. But it would have been that's what our goal ultimately is. But you just got to – I think the biggest thing that we're learning this year or from this past year is even though there's a lot of money in college football and guys can get paid, you still got to go and recruit the right people.
Right.
You gotta go and recruit and retain your roster every day. And if you don't do those things, then you're going to have a complete turnover and go recruit more people in the transfer portal. They might have 2 years, and you don't want to have a whole team of those guys, but you got to fill your needs. But what we realized more so is like you still have to do the work, and you can't arrive. Doesn't matter if we went 13-0 the year before. That was a different team, new game. And so going into this year, our word of the year is earn. Our team word is earn. And basically it's like, hey, you got to earn everything. You got to earn every day. You got to earn your locker room. You got to earn the respect and the pride to wear the Liberty logo. And so that's been our biggest thing is that you got to earn everything you do.
Right. Because you kind of said it, college football has changed so dramatically, so fast, and you kind of have to keep up. But talking to a lot of college coaches, it's you want to use the transfer portal, but you also don't want to live there like some people are living there. You still want to recruit and develop, but then it's like if you develop good enough and they leave, then it's like you have to restart. And I've talked to coaches that think their roster's set, then spring comes along and they lose 3 starters. And they're like, well, shoot, do I play these freshmen or sophomores that may not be ready? Now I got to jump in the portal and try to get some of these kids. And then it's turned into, how much money are you going to pay me to come? And it's like, well, we can't tell you that. That's our name, image, and likeness department. That's our collective. That's not like Coach Ruff can't go say, I'll give you $80,000 to come here. Like that just can't happen. And I'm not saying college football players shouldn't be paid. Like college athletes for sure should have the opportunity to make money, but it's just, I feel for you guys all the time. I'm like, you guys, what's going on at college football is insane.
And what I've realized really this past year is you just got to adapt to it. I think I want to say it might have been Kenny Dillingham where he was just like, you just got to adapt and overcome, because if not, like you're going to get lost, and and if you don't continue to find a competitive advantage every day within this landscape, it's just going to leave you behind. And what I try to still think about is, there's this perception that all these kids care about is money, like relationships are done, and it's not really that. Like there's the right people for your program are going to care about the relationship still, and if they're not the right fit for your program, I'm not saying they don't care about the relationship, but something else might mean more. Right. But we had to basically last in 2023, we had about a 55% roster turnover.
Wow.
So we had to go and find, basically like 20 guys out of the portal.
Wow.
And then obviously with that 50, you got graduation, but a lot of guys went in the portal.
Right.
So we had to find a bunch of different ones, and then went 13-0. Well, then we had about, let's see, between graduation and portal from 23 to 24 was probably another like 15 or so kids. And we struggled this year, but we had to sign a bunch of one-year guys and basically bring them in, introduce them into the culture. Not saying and these kids weren't bad at all, but they didn't understand the full aspect of what it means to be a part of this culture. Where if those guys were here for 4 years, it'd be a different story.
Right.
Because then you start to understand how they gel as a team.
Right.
And you start building those relationships, and it takes time. Like the immediate success that people want in college football is crazy from the outside who don't know anything about just football in general or just their feelings. The perception of having this instant gratification and winning right now instead of developing and building a program, it's going to take 2 to 3 years. Like you see what Marcus Freeman's doing. Like he was DC head coach. Everybody was calling for his job the year before or 2 years before. Now he's playing for the national championship, but it takes time.
Right. Like how many teams before this portal, how many head coaches had to develop and get there? And it took time, and the ADs had to be patient, and the fans had to be patient, and you saw growth from year to year. Like that was what college football was. Yeah. It was developing, and like you said, the culture or the standard or whatever you want to call it. But if you have these kids as freshmen or sophomores, by the time they're juniors and seniors, they almost run the practice themselves. Like they know exactly when they run out there what to do. They know how the locker room is set. They know how they act outside the community. You bring a kid in. Not saying when you bring a kid in, you're bringing him in because you feel like he's a good kid. He's going to whatever. But when he comes in, and even if he's a senior or junior, he's got to follow what the guys that have been there for 2 or 3 years have done. And that can be a struggle. And that could lead to them leaving again. Like, well, I just didn't fit in. I didn't, whatever. And then like for you guys, I know you coach defense, but like for your guys' offense, which is very unique and like the option stuff, you have to find players, even though you want to plug them in. I would feel like, can this kid run our offense? Like we're not a tradition, like we're not a traditional spread. We're not Oregon. We're not this. We're not that. Yeah. We run this specific offense. And so to go into the portal and say, can this kid run the option? Can we do this? has to be a little extra difficult to find a kid like that.
Well, yeah, and it goes back to like the evaluation process, because you go and look like in high school, right? So you've got high school kids where you can watch them on huddle from their freshman year, sophomore year, junior
Yep.
year, and you can get 3 years of evaluation and also getting to know who they are, right?
Right.
Where are they from? Get to meet the family, whoever's at home, whether it's mom, dad, grandma, grandpa, whoever. But you actually get to start building that relationship.
Mm-hmm.
And then you also have the evaluation process of going to the school, talking to people around them. So you're getting usually at least 2 years of the evaluation process from football and non-football. Well, when you go into the portal, one, you've got to build a relationship with whoever you're recruiting from another school, and you only really get like 2 weeks.
Right.
Then you in that 2-week time span, you have to develop a relationship with them. You have to find out, hey, is there any baggage? Like, is there anything bad? Anything remotely bad happening? Why is he leaving? And you're having to find all this stuff. And then if something happens and he doesn't work out, he does something, off campus, or he's just not as good as what you thought, we're still held to a standard of, hey, we got to win games.
Right.
And it's shortening the evaluation process from the portal to, a 2-week time span where you've got to find them, recruit them, get them in, and then boom, they got to come to school. It's hard. So you've got to do a good job of being intentional. And I think the more that you're honest about where they are in your eyes, whether it's on the roster, financially, whatever it is, the more you're honest with them and upfront, that's how you get to basically sell them. Hey, this is what you're going to do. We're not going to promise you anything, but this is where you're projected on the depth chart. This is what the money you're going to be making. And you bring them on a visit, show them everything around here and say, hey, this is what we got. And if you're honest and don't sugarcoat things, you have much better chance of getting the right kid who wants to be here for the right reasons.
Right. And I feel like that's the most difficult part, because now you're battling other schools that are trying to go after this kid. So sometimes with the bigger schools, it becomes a money problem. Like, who's going to offer more money? Who's going to do this? But I still feel like some kids still could fall into like, I like what they're doing at Liberty. I like what they're doing, whatever. I'm getting a scholarship that pays for all this. And then on top of it, I make whatever. Like, even if it's 20 grand, like that's 20 grand I never had before. I can get paid for Twitch streaming or whatever they want to do. And like, I could still, like, it's not against NCAA rules for me to make money this way. And so like, and I can go to a school that is proven that I'm going to win X amount of games and still do this. Like, I feel like there's still kids like that.
Oh, there definitely is. And that's like, you still get the guys that love football and want to be where they feel like they're trusted. Like, for example, if you get a kid, let's say you've got a really good wide receiver. Yeah. And he's a sophomore or junior, and he's coming off a really, really good year at our level, right? Coming off a really, really good year. And then wants to go in the portal because he wants to go somewhere bigger. Well, not only do you have to go and you're going to go play, you're going to go play Power 4 competition week to week to week to week. You're also going to be there with other guys who have been there for 1, 2, 3, 4 years. And you've got to sell yourself to the coaching staff and prove yourself all over again. Where instead you stay here, you already know where you're at. You got the trust of the coaches. You know the strength coach, you got to get a relationship with everybody. Your friends are here. And then you can do the same thing. If you're a draftable prospect, your draft grade and your ability to get drafted is going to skyrocket. Where if you go somewhere else, let's say you go to Georgia or you go to Alabama, Clemson, wherever, if you transfer there, now if you don't do anything similar to what you did at the other school, like Liberty, now you could have gone from a 3rd or 4th round draft pick to now you're an undrafted free agent. Right. So if you want to go and chase the money, you can go make $100,000 or whatever, or how much ever money. But the money is going to be on the back end if you stay wherever you're wanted and you produce at the level that you've already produced before.
Right. And talking to some college coaches, I have to ask them, like, what if you get a kid as a freshman, and let's say his junior year, he's like all American or he's all conference or whatever. You develop that kid and now he leaves because he feels like he's good enough, he's going to go. I'm like, how do you handle that? And what I keep getting told is you can't hold grudges against these kids because then word of mouth, like that kid's like, well, Coach Steve over there, told me to F off because I'm leaving. And now I'm going to go tell this recruit, don't go there because he's not for you.
Yeah.
And then like, if a kid like you're recruiting a high school kid or a kid leaves early, they could come back. So you got to keep, I'm a big Illinois fan. So I remember Coach Underwood, he was talking about how he kept recruiting a kid, kept in contact with him. He was he went to one school and then went to Oregon. Then his senior year was like, you know what? I'm going to Illinois. Just because Coach Underwood of basketball kept that relationship.
Yeah.
Never burned a bridge with a kid. And then he came to Illinois and they go to the Elite Eight and stuff like that. So he kept contact. So like, that's kind of like what you said. You have to adapt. So if a kid wants to leave, you can't sit there and say, okay, F off. Like, no, like you have an honest conversation, what's going to work for them. And, and you tell them, like, I still have a job to do. But.
Yeah. Like if a kid goes in the portal and he's going to go make like the money in college football is just, it's insane.
Right.
For an easy number, let's say a guy goes in the portal and we want him to come back. But he just got offered somewhere else. He gets offered, let's just say $100,000.
Mm-hmm.
Who am I to tell a 20-year-old, hey, don't take that $100,000 pay raise,
Right.
And that's just the world that you live in. Because you, at the end of the day, you still want to do right by the kid. You don't know, like, especially if they have their financial situation at home, like they might have one parent, who am I to say, hey, taking that is not going to be beneficial for you, where, I can't make that decision for him and I can't hold it against him either because it's not something, I'm not in his shoes.
Right.
And there's always a potential of these young kid, like, hey, what if you want to come back? And if I just said, hey, like, you're dead to me. I'm pissed. And I start acting all this way. What if he ever wants to come back? And he realizes like, hey, this wasn't really what I thought it was going to be. So like I said, you gotta adapt, and you can't hold grudges on these kids. And at the end of the day, college football has gotten more into a business, but there's still the relational aspect of it. There's still the transformational relationships that you can get. It's not all transactional, even though that's kind of what's portrayed in the media is like how much money people are making. But you still see the majority of college football talk about, anytime you see it on game day, it's always about the relationship or the reason they chose the school, whether it's, tradition, the relationship with the coach, whatever it may be. There's still the transformational aspects of college football that isn't shown as much,
Right. That's why I like doing this, because I get to hear that stuff. Like, yes, I still hear things you described and other people I've had on here are what the media is saying, but they're not talking about the kids that stay or the kid, like, why is the reason they left? They focus on the people for money. What about a kid that is homesick? Like, you can't hold that against them. Like, I can go to this school and I'm closer to home. What if my mom is sick or she is a single mom and this school that's closer to home gives me like $15,000 more, or I know I can go do like commercials or stuff at home because I know who I am. Okay, cool. Like I get it. You can't hold it. What if, like, you just don't know? Like, they focus on the dark side of it, which it is. There's a problem. There is a major problem, but there are good things out there.
And you're right. There is a problem, and there is a ton of good things that are still out there. But like as a coach, and like what me and Coach McGee, the D-line coaching co-defense coordinator, we do is like, if you want to leave and it's a good situation, we will help you get there.
Right.
Like, we have no issues with that. But we're also going to tell you when it's not, in our opinion, this is not going to be good for your career because we've seen how it's played out before.
Right.
But
right.
If you come from a single parent, maybe mom doesn't make any money or whoever, and you want to go see, hey, I'm going to go in the portal. I think my value financially could be there. Then if it's a good idea, hey, we'll help you go. Like we have no issues with that. It's the ones that where you see that there is a lot of growth to that's still out there for them, and just give me one more year, and then you give me one more year here. You still got 2 years left or whatever. We'll help you go somewhere if that's what you want to do. But we can just tell you're not ready right now.
Right.
And then it kind of goes from there. So we're the thing I love about this staff and Coach Chadwell and all the guys I work with is they're not afraid just to be honest,
right,
and just tell it how it is,
right,
wrong, or indifferent. I think that's where we gain an advantage a lot of the times is because in the recruiting process, we're going to be intentional with how we get to know you. We're going to invest our time and everything into your heart and getting to know who you are. And that's why you don't see a ton of guys now leave our program because they're still the foundational piece of what a relationship is.
Right.
And a lot of those guys care about it. Like I said, we came off a 8-4 season and felt like we were really complacent and we underachieved. Guys get back from Christmas break. Well, we played January 4th at the Bahamas Bowl.
Yep.
Guys get back on campus. What's today's date? The 17th. So the guys got back on Monday.
Yep.
And Coach Chadwell took the locker room away. So they're not getting dressed in the locker room. They have to go shower in their dorms or in their house. It's like, you guys got to earn it back. Like, we have all this nice stuff, but if we're going to be entitled and we're going to feel that we are owed everything, then we're just going to take it away and we got to earn it back. And at first you're like, all right, portal isn't closed yet. Like, so I don't know how this is going to work, but the guys loved it and they embraced it. They're like, yeah, if I have done nothing wrong and I'm getting the locker room taken away, now I'm going to be pissed and I've got to hold these guys accountable if they're still doing the same things and the reason why they took the locker room away in the first place.
That's awesome. I love that. I love that idea.
I don't know how this is going to work out, but hey, Chadwell, I trust you, man. You're good. You're good with me.
That's a great idea. I'm going to have to take that I'm going to tell my head coach.
I'll let you know if it works out next year.
I'll let you know if it works out for us too. If something happens, we'll take it away. We'll be like, you're not allowed to do this, and this anymore, but a little different for high school kids, I guess. But.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. There's some when I was coaching Easley, man, some of those kids just used to live in that locker room. It's like if they didn't have that locker room, I don't know what they'd be doing.
Yeah, because, well, I guess it depends on what high school you're at. We're considered low income, so it's like we provide protein bars and stuff like that. We could take that away, but then you're kind of hurting the kid. Like, hey, you don't earn this. We're going to take this away from you. But high school kids nowadays would be like, all right, But that's awesome. I love that idea of taking it away and earning it back. That's a good idea. Somebody's going to steal that.
Yeah, I mean, because at first you're like, because the day and age we live in college football, it's like, okay, well, if I'm not happy, I'm just going to leave. That's the overwhelming, thing is like, hey, I don't like it here. I'm just going to leave. That's kind of what you see with everything. So when Chadwell said he was doing that, I was like, all right, well, hey, I'm bought in. Like we had our Willie Corn offensive coordinator, Coach Isaac, our co-offense coordinator, and our chief of staff, Colton Corn, who is Willie's brother. They took all their stuff out the coach's locker room, and they're like, I got to earn this back too.
Oh, wow.
And so I was like, all right, well, fine, I'm gonna do it too. So we haven't been using the locker room and just saying, hey, if that's what – if we're feeling too comfortable, if the players are feeling too comfortable, maybe as coaches we got to do a little self-reflection. Maybe we're a little too comfortable.
Right.
And maybe it shows that the kids, hey, we're gonna be there with you. Where it's not punishment. We're just trying to all get better together and grow. And so if you're gonna have to do it, we'll do it too.
Right. All right. So enough about all that stuff. Explain to people what an analyst is, because I remember way back when it was you can't coach, you're doing this, you're doing that. New rules, you can coach now and stuff like that. So, like, what does an analyst role look like in college football?
So for us, and I'm assuming the overwhelming majority of college football, if you're an analyst, you're basically like the number two.
Okay. Yep.
So, like, an easy word would be like you're the assistant D-line coach.
Right.
You're just the analyst. I don't know why they call it that, but
Yep.
you've got GAs, quality control, and then you got analysts. And usually your analysts are the highest of the support staff. GAs are more entry level, and then quality control is kind of in the middle. But it all depends. The wording is a little bit different in certain places. But basically what I do is we have our GAs break down all the film. And then we end up just basically game planning, sitting in the D staff room, drawing up playbooks, all the grunt work that isn't really seen, but it's fun. And you get to coach. I basically last year took the defensive ends, and then Coach McGee took the interior guys, and get to run my own Indy. Still recruit. The word countable coach now is basically who just goes on the road. So you have, your 10 full-time assistant coaches, but they're not the only ones that can go on the road. You just got to have 10 at one time. So as an analyst, you could potentially go on the road. And it's not really what it used to be either. Like when I was a GA, I was a GA at the Citadel, and I was the only defensive GA. I take that back. There was one other guy. And I mean, we did everything.
Right.
Like now there's so many people to where if you're working late at night, then you're not really utilizing your time because you have so much help. We've got 1, 2, 3. We have 3 analysts on defense and then 3 or 4 on offense.
Wow.
And so basically, I know I'm going on a little bit of a tangent, but basically you're the number 2.
Yep.
And you do all the game planning stuff with the coordinators and the coaches. And what we have a good system here, and it's a good environment where it's like if you're in the room, doesn't matter if you're a GA, doesn't matter if you're the coordinator, whoever. If you got an idea, throw it out there. It's open communication because that's how we end up getting better. So it's cool because technically I'm not a position coach, but I still get to help game plan. I get to come up with ideas. I get to draw stuff up, and just talk ball. It's honestly the best job.
I was going to say, like, a part of me is like, if I know somebody, maybe I'll go be an analyst because I'm not. I try to tell my wife that, like, if I go to college football, if I know somebody, maybe I could just go be an analyst and kick back a little bit.
I love it because my job is literally to watch football and coach.
Yeah, you're not really. You're working, but you're not. You're working, but you're not.
I don't work at all. I just coach ball. I coach. That's what they're like. What do you do? I was like, I just coach football. And they're like, that's it. And I'm like, yeah,
that's it.
No,
I pay the bills.
It is awesome. It's like you get to do all the things that go behind the scenes.
Yeah.
And when it actually comes to fruition and it works out, it's like, all right, cool. Like I got to be a part of that. I got to like build the bones of, whatever it may be, whether it's a call that we're all coming up with and we call it on third down, we get a stop. Like, even though I wasn't the one calling it, like I had a part in that,
Right.
And it's good. And it was good for me because I was 23 years old. I was one of the youngest position coaches in the country in Division I. And I felt like my ego was probably getting a little big. And I thought that I was, the greatest thing ever. And going to high school made me realize, like, if you're going to be involved with athletics at any level, you got to crush your ego every day. And because it will get a hold of you and it will wear you out.
Right.
And one of the things I heard was like, ego really means it's edging God out. And so your ego, you're edging God out and you're feeling more of yourself, when in reality you've got to leave that thing at the door.
Right.
And you got to come to work and just understand, like, I'm a nobody. I'm just a regular human being. I want to work hard and I want to be good to people.
Right.
And if you keep your head down and just keep doing it, then you're going to have more fulfillment with whatever you're doing.
Right.
For me as an analyst, that's what I do every day.
But at least you get to coach. I remember analysts didn't coach, and now like you can be on the field and you're getting better. And
Yeah.
I love that. I think anybody there that works in college football that deals with that should be able to be on the field and learn and continue to grow.
You were always technically allowed to coach, but you weren't allowed to like run drills and stuff, but you could kind of be the, the quality control of like how practice is running and stuff. But yeah, making it to where they can, actually coach and, run your own room. Like you're going to see a lot now where one of the analysts might actually be the special teams coordinator because he can coach. Yep. He might not have the title, but he's going to run the special teams and he can put that on his resume. So you're going to see more of that. You're going to see a lot of like defensive coordinators and offensive coordinators. You're going to see them not coaching a position, and it'll be the analyst that's coaching their position. And so there'll be a walk around OC or a walk around DC because now those analysts can coach.
Right. Which is awesome. That's helping. That's helping coaches. So that way, if they get an interview for a job, this is what I did, this is what I did, this is what I did. And it just helps you guys get a job. As long as you're doing that. Now, when people are called OCs and they're not really calling plays, that's the part I don't understand. But, I dealt with that as a Bears fan with Matt Nagy. I dealt with that. Because I'm like, Andy Reid's calling plays. Andy Reid's calling the plays, not Matt Nagy. Don't get it twisted. I know who's doing it. So I've dealt with that, which is awesome. So you coached offense and defense. Which one was your favorite? Like you just like defense more?
I think I obviously my personality is more defense. I'm very hyperactive. I talk with my hands a lot. Like I'm going to go full throttle with whatever. And so defense is a little bit more my personality. But the most growth I ever had in football, and I think the best thing that I ever did was coach offensive line. And even though it was in triple option, I learned just so much about how to be a teacher and how to coach because it's such a fundamental position where if you're a coordinator or whatever, you're looking at the big picture, right? When you're an offensive line coach, you're talking about your right foot just went 6 inches to the right too far. And so it made me a better detail-oriented person and taught me how to be an effective teacher and how to communicate. Defense is obviously my style, but it was the best thing that I could have ever done.
That was going to be my next one was coaching O-line the hardest one because you're looking at 5 guys and they got to work and you're looking at – because I've coached O-line the most out of anything. I've coached for 15 years at the varsity football. Mm-hmm. And I would say out of the 15 years, I would say 10 of them have been O-line, D-line type of thing. Mm-hmm. Man, you're watching all 5 and you got to have your eyes moving and like looking, and on film, you got to rewind it a couple of times, be like, hey, left guard, like you just said, oh, your foot went this way instead of this way. And then you watch it again. Hey, right tackle, your foot did this. The other 3, you're good. Next clip. Yeah. Center, that snap was terrible. You're stepping this way. Well, why is your head looking this way? But then his head's looking this way. And you got to make sure they're all working as a group. It's hard, but it's also fun because you're constantly coaching. So I was going to ask you that. Was that like the hardest one because you're looking at all of it?
It was probably it was the most monotonous.
Yes.
Because it's the same drills every day because it's how you do everything every single day is the same exact thing, and getting better at those drills and just completely going through every day the exact same. I was like, oh, that was the hardest part because you don't really want to create a bunch of new drills because you want to do the drills that fit the scheme. In triple option, it's friggin' veer, down block, scoop, like ace combo. That's it. So there wasn't a ton of different drills. And so we did the same ones every day, but they ended up getting better because of that. And I think there's some validity to kind of keeping things simple and not having to recreate. You're not recreating football. If there's still 11 guys, if football's still playing with 11 dudes, it's the same thing.
Yeah. You guys take that approach on defense, like keeping it simple and not doing the same thing every day, because I know defense is a little different each time. Like, hey, this team is really good at power, so we really got to stress stopping power. Then the next week, well, they're really good at outside zones, so we have to spend a little more time, and the drills change a little bit. But do you
Yeah,
still keep it that way? Like everything's still simple?
yeah. So week to week, like defensive line speaking, like if we're playing a team that runs a ton of gap scheme, we're going to work that block recognition, and we're going to tell them like, hey, this week don't cross this back block, or this week just power scoot it or whatever. And so we'll break up and just do we call them pods, but just group work of just block recognition. Some weeks it might be a big ozone team, and so now we're going to go with the offensive line, and we'll do, instead of one-on-ones, we'll do like one-on-one, or we'll do like half line.
Right.
A lot of the other things that we might see, we kind of try to keep simple. But what we try to do as a unit is try and throw as much adversity as we possibly can. So we might be in, period 13 of Indy, and all of a sudden, boom, we got pursuit drill. And everybody's got to run. We got pursuit. Coach Chadwell does it all the time. He calls it sudden change period. He won't even tell us we have sudden change. Like, we'll be getting ready to go to special teams, and he's blowing the whistle, and he's on the loudspeaker. He's like, sudden change. It's balls on the 30-yard line. Got one timeout, minute 30 left. We're down by 3. And so it kind of gets your guys thinking. It's like, oh, all right, well,
yeah,
I'm breaking the monotony of how grueling a practice can be, and now I've got to refocus.
Oh, I might be mad at that, though. I'd be like, you're taking away what I was about to work on.
Yeah. Oh, no, our line coach hates it.
Oh,
You're like, dude, I just started.
Yeah. Or like, hey, then you lose that and you're like, I didn't get to work on this certain pass protection today. I would definitely do that. I'd be like, I'd be in it in the moment. Then he'd be like, all right, now you gotta go to period, whatever. The next one, I'd be like, wait a minute, I get to work on this. I'd be so pissed.
Yeah.
I'd be so mad.
But
what's been your favorite defensive position to coach?
Linebackers. I learned, but defensive line it's probably been I don't want to say it's the most fun, but it's the most like physically grueling position to coach, because you're dealing with these massive human beings, and you're having to do show them what a bump is, and you're getting a bag and you're having to friggin' roll into them. But linebackers has been it's also what I played, so I'm familiar with it.
Right. But do you recommend to like younger coaches, high school, college, coach something that you didn't play, coach something that if you played offense, coach defense, if you played defense, go coach offense at some point? Like, should they do that?
I would, because it helps me a ton. It kind of goes back to the same thing we're talking about with specializing in sports. Like, you don't want to just specialize in being a linebackers coach. You don't want to just specialize your entire career and base that off of, because you don't know what's going to happen.
Right. Right.
For me, like I said, coaching offensive line was probably the best thing that happened in my career, because I got to learn the other side of the ball.
Yep.
But yeah, if you're a young coach and you think that I just want to be a linebackers coach, like go study running backs, go study, the opposition of what you're going to see week to week. And the biggest thing I've taken from one of my mentors is learn one phase of special teams, because if you can teach and coach special teams, you could always have a job.
Yes, absolutely. That happened young in my career. I was doing O-line, D-line. I was still living in Charleston, Illinois, where Eastern is. New head coach comes into the high school. I go to him, and I was like, I want to coach football here, so I don't have to drive back home to this other school. He goes, okay, what have you coached? Blah, 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 blah. He goes, all right, let me think about it. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Next day he comes in, he goes, you still want to coach? And I was like, yeah, let's do it. He goes, all right, you're doing running backs, linebackers. You're going to work with the defensive coordinator on varsity, and you're going to call the JV defense. And I said, what? And he was like, yeah. And he goes, what's your goal? I was like, I want to be an offense coordinator or a head coach. And he goes, you ain't doing it unless you do this. You got to do it now.
Yeah.
Oh my God, I was, I'm young. I'm like 21, 20, 21. I'm like, no, this is stupid. And I go home to my apartment. I'm pouting like, oh, what the hell am I doing? And
Yeah.
but then you go to practice and you're doing it. And then the next year I became the OC. Like he's like, all right, now you're going to call offensive plays for varsity. I'm like, oh, okay. And he goes, and you got to coach quarterbacks this year. I'm like, okay. So I'm learning how to coach quarterbacks. I'm calling. And then all of a sudden it became, we had a young wide receivers coach. So I was like, all right, I'm going to coach quarterbacks, but I'm also going to have a lot of group with wide receivers, coaching wide receivers. I'm going to take my hands in this, blah, blah, blah. And then the next year, hey, I don't have a safeties coach. You got to be the OC, coach quarterbacks, and can you coach the safeties for me when we switch? I'm like, sure. So now I got to coach safeties, and I'm doing this, And now that I look back, I'm 34. I look back and I'm like, that was the best thing ever, because now when I watch film, I can understand what they're trying to do on defense. And then I can sit with defensive guys and say, this is what the offense is trying to do to you, and vice versa, and like what they're doing. And so I'm back to doing O-line now because that's what's gotten me jobs when we moved to the suburb. For some reason, there's no O-line coaches. Every spot I've been at now, they're like, oh, I need an O-line coach, like an actual O-line coach. Okay, if that gets my foot in the door.
Exactly.
And so I think if you're an O-line coach, special teams or whatever, you're always going to have a job somewhere.
Yep.
Because and sometimes O-line coaches, you need two. Like you need two D-line coaches and two O-line coaches.
That's what we had. We had when I was at the Citadel, I was the tackles and tight ends coach. I just coached the tackles and the tight ends. And the offensive line coach, he taught and coached, the guards and the centers. And so, yeah, if you're pretty efficient with how you're running things, having two guys on probably the two most, fundamental positions between O-line and D-line, disregarding quarterbacks, because that's obviously a whole different story.
Right.
But you got more people where you need more help and you need a ton of time to teach.
Right. And I feel like D-line nothing against linebacking coaches, quarterback coaches. O-line and D-line have to be very versed in what's going on in the rest of it, because it all has to fit together. So like you guys with D-line, you can't stunt this way if the blitz ain't going to happen here and the coverage ain't going to happen here, or, where are we out leverage? Like, are they overloading us? Like, we have to all work together. O-line, same thing. Like, when you start adding tight ends and fullbacks, H-backs, or whatever, how does this fit together with our blocking scheme? How does this fit? Where do they go? The pass protection fits with the quarterback, whatever it is. So they're very, like, I know the whole offensive playbook. I'm the O-line run game guy, but I know the whole thing because it has to fit. Like, I have to know, okay, this is our deep route. So I'm yelling at the O-line, like, hey, this is what this is, because it has to be longer, like it's a longer developing play, or if it's a run, like whatever. And so that's why I feel like those have to be your top guys. Because back in the day, O-line coaches were the OCs. Now it's the quarterback coaches that the OCs. Yeah. Like it's kind of flipped a little bit.
Yeah, with the game changing, it's taking a turn.
Oh, it for sure has, and it's crazy. And I love keeping up with it. And I do have I have a solution to fix college football with this portal shit. I have the perfect solution. You're allowed one transfer one time, unless your head coach leaves.
Yep.
Then you get a second one, and that's it.
That would be awesome.
That's how you solution. Now, I don't know the money stuff. I'm too stupid to deal with numbers and this and this.
Me too. And I don't get paid to deal with the money stuff.
No. Well, and that stuff is happening in high school. Like name, image, likeness is in high school now.
I know, it's crazy. We don't see a ton of the guys that we recruit. We don't see a ton of it, but I've heard some war stories about it though.
Oh, it's in high school for sure, but it can't. What's the rule? The rule is it can't affect like during the season. You can't do things on campus. You can't do things here, and you can't use it as like a recruiting tool.
Yeah, but
they do. They for sure do. Especially if you're a private school and you got the boosters. Oh, for sure, it's happening.
Oh, I wouldn't doubt it.
But it's like it's like you get a free meal here. It's not college. It's like, oh, you get a free meal here. It's your mom gets a free car wash, or like, hey, here's a gift card for this, or it's hey, come to this local car dealership and just promote, and we'll give you $100. Yeah, it's not. anything.
Anything
But
crazy.
no, yeah, but it's still here. And then the transfer thing has trickled down to high school, where
Yeah.
high school kids will post like, I'm foregoing my senior at this high school to go to this high school. I sit there and look at it, and I'm like, I don't blame the kid because this is the norm, but I'm looking at it going, part of me's like, who cares? And then a part of me's like, really? We have to post this on Twitter?
I know. Yep. I remember the first time I saw one of those, I was like, wait, what? Like, I couldn't even, I didn't understand. I'm like, how does that work? Because I remember when I was playing, like you didn't transfer schools unless you moved or something like that.
Which is what is happening. What's happening is parents are literally moving so their kid can do this, or they're renting an apartment for like however many months, and they claim that's their residence.
Yeah.
That's what's happening.
Yeah, that's crazy.
But I think back to my parents. If I looked at my parents and say, hey, can we move? Or, hey, can you do this? They would have laughed at me. They'd been like, what? Like, no. Like, my taxes are paying for this high school. You're going? Or like, well, my parents were like, yo, you think you're that good, huh? No. Like, but again, when we all grew up, that wasn't a thought. That wasn't a thought. Like, unless your parents got a new job and they had to move, that was the only time of like, you left, or if a school redistrict. I see that up here. Just sometimes school districts redistrict, so you may have to. You went to this high school because a lot of high schools in Chicagoland area, like some school districts have like 2 or 3 high schools. So if they redistrict, oh, you went to this school, now you got to go to this school the next year just because your house lines up. Or like a school I coached at, there was an apartment building. One side looked this way, one side looked this way on this street. They redistrict. If your apartment faced this street, you went to this high school. If it faced this street, you went to this high school.
That's insane.
Oh, it was my first school that I coached at when we moved to the suburbs in 2018. The head coach told me that. He was like, yeah, they all grow up in these apartment buildings or these townhouses, and they play youth football together. Well, now this side goes to my high school. This side goes to our rival high school. Like, it's just... And I'm like, well, why? Why does it work that way? And he goes, well, his phrase was, welcome to Illinois, western suburbs, DuPage County football. Like, this is schools. Like, this is what it is. Okay.
That's insane.
Oh, that's been my biggest adjustment. Is how like I said, in the suburbs, it's a lot different because you could live in this town, but that town doesn't have like there's a town called Lombard. There's no Lombard High School. There's, but like where I work at Addison, I work in Addison, Illinois, and there is a Addison Trail High School. So in my mind, I was like, oh, everybody in Addison goes to this high school. Then you look at it and you go, well, this small part of Addison goes to Lombard East High School. This small part goes to this high school. And I said, why? Well, that's just how it's district. That's how the lines work. What?
Yeah, whoever's drawing those lines up, I want to talk to those guys.
Oh yeah, there's a road called Swift Road, and if you live on this side, you go to this high school. If you live south, you go to Addison. Jeez. And the high school that they all go to is good. I coach there. It's Lombard East. They go to Lombard East. Mm-hmm. What's going to stop a kid from moving just right down the street? Yep. Like, and I'm like, but they live in Addison. Why are they not going here? And they said, well, years ago we had too many kids, and so they redistricted, and so they could go here. And I'm like, okay. He goes, yeah, we had like 2,200 kids in the school. I'm like, yeah, now we got 1,900. So
yeah, something adding up.
Yeah, that's my biggest adjustment. But where me and my wife moved to a small town up here, it's like 11,000 people. That's considered really small.
Wow.
And everybody in this town goes to the high school. So I'm like, okay, so where we live now and our future kids will go to that high school. Like we're far enough. Like I drive 45 minutes to work. Like that's how far we moved from the suburbs.
Oh my gosh.
And I'm like, oh, well, at least that's there. But
yeah,
it's the transfer thing has trickled down to high school and I see it and I'm like, and it's not like I'm going to this high school and then my next year I'm going to a high school that's like 8 miles down the road. Mm-hmm. Some are posting literally like an hour and a half to 2 hour high school away.
Oh my gosh.
And so that's where I'm like, doesn't this seem fishy to you, to anybody else? Like, isn't this like
Yeah, there's something
weird?
going on.
Well, I talk about the private schools. There's some high school coaches that do some
Mhm.
shadiness a little bit, I guess.
Yeah.
But some of their shadiness is just their success. So if they're a high school that's winning a lot, they don't have to
Yeah.
say anything. Just like,
No, they don't have to say anything. If you win, people want to go where they win.
and then they can't say anything if a parent rents out an apartment because they could just say, "Oh, we're getting a." I know parents that have done this. We're going through a separation right now in our marriage. So I'm getting this apartment here, and then as soon as they're done playing, they're like, "Oh no, we're not getting a divorce. What are you talking about?" Like
Oh my
because
God.
you can't prove it. You can't say like, "Oh, like."
Yeah, they called it off.
Yeah, like so a lot of that happens now, and I don't understand like why parents allow it to happen.
Yeah, I
Like
don't.
my parents wouldn't.
That would be. I don't know how. I don't know how they get away with it.
Hey, well, us public school guys that don't do that are trying, but you can't prove it. You can't like.
Yeah.
Then if you do try to report things, then people watch you. Then like if I go report something and they find out I reported it or our school did, then they're gonna look at what you do. And whatever,
Mhm.
if you step out of line at anywhere, then they're going to say something, and it becomes like a battle.
Yeah.
And so, like at least for us, and our head coach is awesome. He's like, if I know for 110% fact that shadiness is going on and something's happening with one of our kids, I'm reporting it. I don't care.
Yeah.
But I'm not going off of something that I don't know. We're going to just try to keep getting the kids in our youth program to stay here. We're going to try to just coach the way we can.
Water your own grass.
Right, that's all we can do.
Yep.
And it doesn't help that our youth programs pull from like a 20-mile radius. So our youth programs have kids from all these different towns that will never go to our high school. So then it's like you watch me like, oh, look at that kid. That 8th grader is 6'2". This is awesome. Oh, he lives in Naperville. And you're like, oh.
Yep, not getting him.
Okay. Where's all the Addison kids? Oh, they're on the sideline not playing. So that's a whole other different like youth programs just want to win. They don't want to develop. And,
yeah.
You know, when we all grew up, it was about development and it was about you're going to go have pride at this school. And now it's let's go to Florida and play the Pop Warner Championship and win. And then you're like, okay, well, because winning matters. I'm like, winning matters at the high school level and college level. You guys, you're just trying to be fun and you're trying to learn how to be competitive, but have fun. Like, sorry, that's a whole other topic. That's a whole other issue. Well, Coach, I've taken a lot more time than I thought. I appreciate you coming on here. I'm a fan of Liberty, so I keep watching, but I'm a fan. It's awesome.
I appreciate it, Coach. Thank you for having me on and get you up here to a game.
If my wife lets me, I will come up there.
Come on, I got your tickets.
You got hey, maybe me and the head coach will come visit. Like,
yeah, come on. Yeah, we can come up and talk some ball and hang out.
He just said that to me yesterday. He goes, "We need to go somewhere as a staff. We got to start talking to people." And I'm like, "Let's go. Let's figure out where we want to go because we need that time. We need to figure out and see what other teams do and learn."
Absolutely.
And just so you got tickets. Ooh, it may have to come
anything you need, I got you.
Oh, perfect. I appreciate you.
Absolutely.